The party catches up to the Robed reunion guys in the cave, and the ground then, if you remember, surprisingly gives way, and one of the Robed guys falls through the ground into the abyss.
Shit.
And one thing that I loved here are the different character responses to watching the robed zombie guy potentially fall to his death at that moment, because the responses say so much about who they are as a character. And I actually have these written down. So Tifa, right away, they're all kind of mortified to see this happen, but Tifa says, I hope they're okay. She's learned, I think, over the years, and this shows that she's learned to accept hard realities, but she's still like this hopeful optimist who has natural empathy for people and wants the best for others. And then Cloud's response is very much business, right?
Yeah.
So he acknowledges that he agrees, he hopes he's okay.
But if not, nothing we can do.
Cloud's response is very much like his character. He agrees with Tifa, but then he reverts to his like kind of brass tacks and flat reality acceptance. Not heartless, but not super empathetic. And then Tifa, she nods and she agrees with Cloud, like she knows she has to accept reality and that this is something that she has been encouraged to do time and time again by Cloud. So she's trying to remind herself and move on, even though she's naturally empathetic to the situation. But she also is, this is interesting, Tifa tends to be less confrontational and kind of accept others' opinions without arguing more than her own opinions. And there are moments of arc here where she's showing that she's learning to think for herself a little bit more. But before that point, Barret's response is my favorite. And you and I both are big Barret fans, right? He says, I don't know.
I don't know. We shouldn't just leave him.
So while Barret is like this giant, gruff, muscle military guy with this literal gun for an arm, right? Who swears like a sailor and yells half the words that come out of his mouth.
The hell you think's gonna happen when it's all gone, huh? Answer me!
He's the softy of the group at heart, right? We see that in the way he raises Marlene.
Well, so this scene also caught my attention for the exact same reasons you're saying, but I took a different tack of it, which is, for me, you're right. I was surprised that Barret said what he said, but then after that, after thinking about it for a minute or so, I was like, no, that makes perfect sense because he's ex-military. And most ex-military people, if you talk to them, there's a brotherhood thing. Now, granted, these Robe guys have nothing to do with them, but it's like the nobody gets left behind rule, right? Like you never leave a fellow man behind, regardless of what the situation is.
Yeah, I agree with that. But is Barret ex-military? Because I thought he worked in the mines. I mean, Cloud is technically the ex-military.
I feel like he is ex-military, and I could be wrong. Like I don't know if they've ever explicitly said that he is ex-military, but he carries himself like he's ex-military.
He acts ex-military. I mean, that's how the character is definitely designed.
Left, your left, right. What?
So one of two things. He's either ex-military of some kind, or he's Walter Sobchak from what's that movie?
I don't know. What
with the dude in it.
The movie with the dude.
Well, he's actually called the dude.
Oh, he's actually called the dude? I don't know what you're talking about then.
Jeff Bridges is in it.
Oh,
it's a cult classic.
Is it a remake?
No, it's old. I watch this movie at least once a year. The name is evading me. But John Goodman plays a character in there called Walter Sobchak, who throughout the entire movie keeps making all these references to Nam and how like men died with their face down in the mud in Nam, and I'm not going to stand for this or whatever.
I got buddies who died face down in the muck so that you and I could enjoy this family restaurant.
The Big Lebowski.
Big Lebowski, there you go, that one. He's either actually ex-military, and that's why this like presence and these words he's using all make sense, or he's Walter Sobchak, who never actually served in the military, but just like pretends like he did. And then we find out at the end of the movie that he never actually served in the military in Vietnam.
Oh.
So it's a comedy, right? So that's
right.
kind of, but yeah, to me, he comes off as ex-military, but like you're saying, maybe he's not. Maybe he's just a disgruntled former mine worker.
But I mean, you could think about it like, I would imagine that mines would be run very similar to military operations in many ways.
Probably.
So you could pick up a lot of the exact same kind of characteristics if you were to work in a mine versus military.
Right, but I too was surprised, like you said, when he was like, it feels wrong to leave him here. And then even more when he like jumps down in there, I'm like, okay, hold on. They probably died. And how would he know that they didn't? And then to just jump in a crevice in the earth on the chance that they might have survived. And then what are you going to do?
But I mean, think about that though. Like, what would motivate him to do that? It would have to be like a big heart.
A big heart?
It has to be that. And I mean, you have to also remember, like, he doesn't want Tifa to follow him because he's spent a ton of time in mines. So it may look like this dark crevice to us and to like Tifa, but to him, this is like a second home in a way. Like, this was his career for a long time.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it's not as dangerous for him.
I've never worked in a mine, so I can't speak to this. Maybe we have some listeners that are miners, but it would seem to me like when a collapse like that happens, the last thing you do is
just jump down
a level. Like, but like you said, is it a big heart or is it something else? Because there is a statement he makes at the very end of this chapter that kind of indicates where his mind is at this entire time. That could be the reason he did this. That's not related to like a big heart.
Interesting. But I didn't catch that. I should be taking notes.
It's one of like the last things he says as the chapter's coming to a close. And it's the part where at the end he says something like, because we all know what at stake here. It's literally the end of the world.
I ain't stopping. Not for them or anyone. Not after Midgar. Not after what we saw. We all know what's at stake here. The fate of the world. So if they get in our way, that's on them.
And so like he's willing to risk everything because in his mind, it's like, it's Marlene, it's everybody else. And those Robe guys are supposed to be the secret that's going to lead him to Sephiroth to put an end to this threat. And so I think in his mind, it's the mission. It's like, we need to follow these guys. We need to question them. They are ultimately how we find Sephiroth and how we defeat him and how we stop this threat to the world.
Okay.
He says that at the very end of the chapter.
So you think this is more of a mission-based response than like a softy response?
Well, I don't know, because the words he uses are, I don't think we should just leave them, right? And so like...
Because if it was mission-based, then I think he would just press forward though, because he doesn't need that one.
Right. So like, it's hard.
I think to me, it's just Barret's heart is humongous.
It could be, right? And it could be them, they're just writing that in for, but I feel like there's more than that. And we're going to get a payoff later for it. It obviously didn't happen in this chapter. So everything they're doing, even if it's at the risk of self-destruction, as long as they complete the mission to save the world, that's what matters to him.
Interesting. I think that definitely is a strong motivator for him, for sure. And if you look at this scene even closer, so Barret actually tells Tifa not to go with him. And I think, again, that's out of concern for his party member.
I'll go check.
Okay, I'll come too.
Nah, you stay. I know what I'm doing down here. You don't. Last thing we need is you getting hurt on us.
And Tifa's response is actually really interesting because I was talking a little bit about how she tends to let people kind of walk all over her opinion-wise, just a little bit, right? Like she's the first to go timid and quiet when people disagree. She's not confrontational. She can kick your butt physically, right? Like confrontational physically, she can destroy you. But as far as like emotionally goes, she's typically more timid. And when Barret tells her not to go down the mine, like, look, this is a job for somebody who was a miner. At first, she starts to like apologize, like,
Okay, if you're sure. Sorry to...
And then she deliberately stops herself and she settles on, thank you.
I mean, thank you.
It's a tiny moment, but what's the point of that moment if you're a writer, right? The point is to show this arc that Tifa is starting to go through, right? Where she's always been this like tough martial arts girl with a huge heart, but she has that history of being passive. And this is her moments of being like, no, I'm going to own what I say, and I'm going to acknowledge gratitude in moments where I should do so. I mean, again, short and sweet, but it's the game's way of showing us that she maybe is starting to value and recognize her own opinions a little bit more. So in that tiny little thing. And then as far as like Aerith goes, she doesn't say much during this entire scene except for
Careful down there!
Which is, it would be weird to have her not say anything at all because she clearly has a big heart too. And that's just I think the game's way of ensuring that she cares.
Yeah. And our listeners are going to have to forgive me because I constantly refer to Red as the dog. Just because, now I love dogs.
He's more of like like a cat to me, though.
Yeah, I know he is.
Everybody calls him the dog, but I'm like, he's like a tiger or like a mountain lion.
He's like he's one of Hojo's experiments, right? So
but that's not where he originated. Like I think he was born like that.
Right, but he got like his powers and stuff, right?
I don't know, actually.
I don't remember anymore because, again, I haven't played the original 7 in decades.
And you're in chapter 5.
That too. But no, I love dogs. I'm 100% a dog person. I've had dogs all my life except for the last few years. So I always refer to him as the dog. And so when all this went down and then the dog jumped in, I was like, of course, because the dog can navigate this easily, or cat or whatever you want, cat dog, I guess. I don't know. He's got the, what do you call it? Like cats do, where they can, jump between things super easily and
pouncing. I don't know if that has a specific
pouncing.
term.
He has these skills, right? And so he is probably the least threatened by going into this thing because he can probably get himself out pretty easily.
Right. Well, animals live in caves and mountains and rocks.
I'm no stranger to caves.
The humans, I'm not so sure about. I'm like, you guys are going to get stuck. You're not as limber and as agile as an animal is, right? So
that's true, but it is a mine. So it has been configured for humans to a certain extent.
It is a mine, and I don't know if you could see better than I could, but that looked like just a crevasse to nowhere.
Yeah, it did look like an abyss.
I couldn't tell.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you're right. Maybe there's just another level down there.
Yeah.
And they fell down a level. Sure, I know that happens in video games, but the way the camera worked, you know what it reminded me of? The Mythril mines in Lord of the Rings where the Balrog's down there. So the last thing I'm going to do is go down that hole, but maybe they saw something we didn't.
So do you think that they shouldn't have gone down there? I mean, my opinion, when Barret was like, I don't know if we should just leave him, I'm like, you probably should just leave him. That was my thought. But
especially since they've seen a bunch of these Robe characters.
Yeah.
It's okay, who cares if one's lost?
Yeah, but they're looking at each of these people, and Barret especially, because of a lot of the other reactions he has throughout the game, he's looking at these Robe people as individual humans, not just as zombies,
right.
That
as opposed to Sang, right? Or Sung or whatever.
Sung, yeah.
That guy's on another. I love that character.
Well, yeah, and we'll get to him because he comes up later, and I have some thoughts on that too, which is
awesome.
really interesting.
Yeah.
You're a fan of Sung.
I love him. Yeah.
But yeah, so Barret and Red go off into the abyss, which I don't think that I would highly recommend, right? I might have actually been more like a mix of Tifa and Cloud had I been there. Man, I really hope they're okay, but I don't know what else we can do, so I guess we'll just keep moving,
I wouldn't have even gone that far. I would have been like, they're gone and let's keep moving.
You're more like Cloud.
Exactly. As upset as I am to admit that.
Nothing we can do.
If it's my friend or my family member, sure, I'm going to,
but if they're a zombie,
some random Robe zombie, no, hey, it was nice knowing you. I'm going to continue where I'm going, right?
I would have felt bad.
I have a mission to complete here.
But I feel bad killing spiders.
But I'm one of those people that I'm generally mission minded.
Yeah, well, so am I, but I
have to complete the mission. That's what has to happen here. So sorry you fell down the hole.
Moving on.
Best of luck, right? Yeah. Just keep moving.
Careful down there.